Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled Ways and Means Committee meeting. This is our first one of the year, so Happy New Year, everyone. And thanks for staff for staying over the holiday time to come up with this great agenda. So we have this to work with. We have 28 items on our agenda. 27 are on the printed agenda. We're going to have an additional item that I'm going to bring forward for your consideration this afternoon. The first 5 are a series of legal settlements from the City Attorney's Office. Item number 6 is a Finance and Property Services item. This is the appointment to the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee appointments. This includes most of the council ward offices, as well as 3 from the 4 from the mayor's office. Item number 7 is a lease with Walker Art Center for equipment storage at Vineland Ramp. Item number 8 is the acquisition of real estate from Hennepin County for Eastside Storage and Maintenance Facility project. And there's also a bid for City Traffic and Maintenance Facility Paint Tumbler project. Those are from the Finance Property Services. Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee brings forward a number of items. It's Open Access Technology Incorporated. This is a bond issuance for item number 10. Item number 11 is a contract with Hennepin County for cost sharing for Minnesota Family Investment Program Employment and Training Services. Item 12 is a bid for private water service disconnects and sewer cutoffs. Item number 13 is the infill housing work group recommendations. Item number 14 and several other items are from the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. Number 14 is an amendment to an agreement with Center for Energy and Environment for professional building benchmarking and disclosure services. Item 15 is the amendment to an agreement with OMADA for online data education services. Federal Lead and Healthy Homes grant application for 16. Item 17 is a grant from Wilder Research Center for school-based clinics research project. Item number 18 is accepting Minnesota Department of Health federal home visiting funds. Item 19 is a contract with Pillsbury United Communities to provide sexual health services for young men of color. Item number 1 of that action was authorizing the agreement with Pillsbury United in an amount not to exceed $85,000 to provide sexual health services for young men of color for a period of February 1 to 2017 through December 31st of 17, with an option to extend that contract for $85,000 annually up to 2 additional years. At committee today, they added item number 2, which is directing the health department staff to request up to $100,000 in 2016 rollover funds to support sexual health services for young people of color. And this gives us an opportunity to take this up at Ways and Means. So I'm going to hold that item for a little discussion in a moment. Transportation and Public Works Committee is the sale of city-owned vehicle for the University of Minnesota, as well as the 4th Street South Signal Upgrade Project. It's a contract amendment with Thomas & Sons. Item number 22 is a grant acceptance for the state Safe Routes to School funds for Lindale School Crossings Project. 23 is the Lime Sludge Holding Tank Repair Project. Item number 24 is with Metropolitan Council Municipal Infiltration and Inflow Grant Programs. 25 is the bid for Lindale Safe Routes to School Project. 26 is the bid for Columbia Heights Filtration Plant Partial Masonry Project. Item number 27 is the Downtown East 2017 Operations Agreement. And then not on the printed agenda, but I'm bringing forward, it's a settlement of claims with for 6 individuals related to a police action earlier this or past year, late the past year. So on those 27 items on the consent agenda, pulling the item number 19 for discussion. All those in favor of those consent items, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those items all move forward. Taking up the item number 19, which is the contract with Pillsbury United Communities. I'd like to bring forward just the item that was in front of the committee, which was item number 1, which authorizes the agreement. Their additional staff direction that I'm proposing that we don't accept in this committee adds and this is why we have a Ways and Means Committee, so we get to look at things that don't have policy implications, but has financial implications. This, I think, is not a good use of rollover funds. I don't think it's consistent with our rollover policy, which is in our financial policies. So I'd like to just separate those two items in 19 with just the authorizing the agreement, and willing to take any other conversation on the item.
Can you hold?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, let me do that for you. 19 right there. Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering, since Mr. Ruff is here, would he be willing just to say a few words about how we typically treat rollover funds year to year and what kinds of things are
Sure. Mr. Ruff?
inclusive in that process typically?
I think it would be a nice overview. I know we just had the budget where we made this budget decision about a month ago, but if you could give an overview of the rollover policy and why this may not be an appropriate action.
Sure. Mr. Chair, Councilmember Palmisano, I'll also rely on LaTonya Green to give me some historical backing on this. But generally, as I understand rollover, there's a list of priorities of things that are typically funded. And the first priority would be budgeted items that for some reason could not be spent in the calendar year. So for example, in calendar year 2016, if we had a program, a grant, some revenues that for whatever reason we couldn't hire the staff or couldn't implement the program, then that's rolled over to the next year because the revenue is still there, right? And it's just a matter of moving that revenue to the next year with the expenditure. The second area that we've typically used rollover would be for major capital items, more of one-time expenses. The 10th Avenue Bridge, a good example of that. The third area would be the CARS program, so the smaller capital items such as software, equipment that smaller departments especially couldn't get funded. There is a prioritization process that we follow through the CARS program, and so there are applications taken and then decisions made on the priority of that. And then lastly would be just other things that if we have enough money that we can fund. And I think Ms. Green, when she and I talked about this recently, said that at times when we've had exceptional amount of money left over at the year end, then we've been able to fund a variety of programs that maybe hadn't been previously discussed. I will say that this rollover season, we do not expect to have sufficient funds even to cover those earlier priorities that I described. Now, certainly council can make exception to the policies, but that's generally the rollover program as I understand it. Ms. Green, if there's anything else.
Ms. Green, do you have anything to add to that explanation?
Chair Quincy, committee members, Mr. Ruff has accurately stated the rollover process policies. The only thing that I would add is that we also have a stipulation that it should be one time in nature if you're requesting a rollover request. If it's going to be ongoing, then it shouldn't be a request that's made through the rollover process.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this item? Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Isn't this one-time funding that we're talking about from the committee this morning?
Chair Quincy, committee members, this particular item could be a one-time request. I was just stating that that's what the policy states.
Yeah, just to cover, valid encumbrance, one-time expenditure, purpose consistent with department business plan, have the budget year appropriation balance available for the encumbered item, and have a positive fund financial position. Those are the 5 policy positions. Good. Councilmember Palmisano.
Mr. Chair, so then pardon my confusion, but part 1 of this item appears to be potentially a 3-year program depending upon funding and performance. So are we saying that the $85,000 in part 1 of this item is a likely 3-year program and part 2 is a one-time CARS ask of $100,000?
I believe that would be fair. I don't know if the CARS program per se, but item number 19 is a contract for a one-year period with additional options. That's what the core action is. The staff direction is looking for a one-time at this for using the 2016 funds. But it's not related to the contractual obligation. Additional questions, comments on this item? Councilmember Bender is back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Johnson and I came in after this item began discussion, so I just didn't know, is there a motion related to item 19 in front of us now, or could you just, I'm sorry that we were late,
Yeah.
but update us on what's the
That's
status of
fine.
this discussion?
Just for clarification, I'm proposing that we pass item number 1 of this and strike number 2 from the action. That's what my motion is. Councilmember Bender, or I'm sorry, Glidden. I thought you did. Councilmember Bender.
At some time before we vote, then I just do have some additional questions then about why, and I might have missed that part of the discussion. I'm sorry.
You know, for simplification, if we could, I'd like to just separate these two items right now. Just take a vote on item number 1, and then if somebody would like to propose an alternative for a number 2, we could do that. Maybe I have an issue. Just to move forward so we don't leave number 1 hanging. All those in favor of item number 1 on section number 1 of item number 19 related to the agreement, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. So on item number 2, Councilmember Glidden.
Thanks. And so since I'll just go ahead and as part of my ask, Mr. Ruff, if you would please, or Ms. Green, to clarify then which part of the rollover policy isn't met by this, because I think the 2 council members who came in late just wanted to hear that clarified.
Chair Quincy, committee members, the portion of the policy that this particular item does not match is the encumbrance. This program, my understanding is that it does not already exist, so it's not included in the 2016 budget in order to be rolled over into 2017.
Right. So just so that's clear, the idea is that this particular program had not yet begun within the department, or this part of the contract was not yet instigated, and so then it wouldn't fit the policy.
Chair Quincy, committee members, I'm only stating what my understanding of the program is, and just the way it's coming forth, it does not seem that that's the case, but if someone has additional information that they can shed some light on it, that would be helpful for us.
Right. And then I'll just say that would be great to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the direction is only just that it be considered, and at the end of the day, it's going to kind of come into a list, and as Mr. Ruff said, there are other things that more clearly meet the criteria, and there's going to be more requests than available funds. So I'll just say we may be having a very theoretical discussion here, and again, this is not directing that this item be funded, just that it could be considered with part of the list, and it looks like it might have some questions whether it meets the criteria.
Mr. Ruff, if you could
Chair
add.
Quincy, yeah, I think this is somewhat a philosophical issue of, does the Ways and Means Committee want to be using the rollover process as a way of redoing the budget process, right? So that's, I think, underlying the policy issue, because my understanding this program existed, but this funding above and beyond what was the 2016 allocation in the budget, this increased amount did not exist in 2016. And recollection was that it was in the mayor's recommended budget, and the council adopted a shift in that funding. And so there's some further precedent that you would also want to take into consideration. But Councilmember Glidden, sure, there's any number of requests that can come before this. It's just a question of what kind of precedent do you want to set, where then other items which weren't funded to the levels that were satisfactory in the budget process, do we want to reopen that budget discussion? So that's just a philosophy that I would just observe makes our lives more difficult unless we have a clearer priority system.
Yeah. And I guess I'll just kind of make a comment that I'll just apologize to my colleagues because I was sitting on the other committee that considered this, and I think I just honestly was not paying as close of attention as I probably should have when this item came forward, because, you know, I have been on the council for a while, and I've seen these items come forward, and I actually do think it is true. We maybe could make an argument that it could be part of the list, but it is a little bit more of the redoing the budget discussion, and folks can kind of fall where they want to fall and whether they want to redo that.
Councilmember Bender?
Thank
Sure.
you, Mr. Chair. I was also on the committee this morning that heard the presentation about this existing program in the health department. So I think it's very common in our health department to have one-time funding for programs that, if there were ongoing commitment, would be ongoing work. But since our health department relies 80% on grants and one-time funding for its budget, they're always sort of piecing together this funding for programs that they've identified as staff as a priority. I see the debate here, and I guess having come so quickly after the budget, I see the point that the council chose not to fund the department's request, but we approve funding all the time outside of the budget cycle. We funded $500,000 maintenance funding for the Commons, for example, outside of the regular budget process. We took votes on significant funding for the Target Center outside of the typical budget process. So this committee approves a lot of money outside of the budget process every cycle. And so I guess I see the point about it being specific to the rollover funds, but I'm just not hearing a specific way that this doesn't meet the criteria of our policy. It is an ongoing program. It is one-time funding. Unless I sort of missed, it wasn't encumbered was the problem about our policy. Maybe I just need more understanding of the specific financial policies that it's not meeting.
Chair Quincy, committee members, it's not that it's ongoing, it should be one time in funding. Meaning if it's an activity that's one time and you're requesting those dollars to be rolled over, it should not be an ongoing function of the department.
Sure, but I believe that it is one time. I believe that even the original request was for one-time funding, is what I'm saying for this particular program.
All right. At this point, I don't know if anybody have more questions or comments. I'm willing to take a vote on that. Although I haven't moved that item, I guess I had separated. That's coming from the committee. So on the item number 2, directing the health department staff to request up to $100,000 in 2016 rollover funds to support sexual health services for young people of color. Any other questions on that? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
could I get a clarification?
Sure.
You're making a motion to, can you clarify your motion at this
Yes.
point? I'm sorry.
My motion right now is coming from the committee. My original intent was to strike it, but I thought we should separate it, so we should talk about it in 2 different ways. So I'm going to make this motion to direct health department staff to request up to, because it came from committee in that form. So if one wants that to happen from the committee's action today, you'd be voting yes. If you'd like to not have that department request the rollover funds, that would be a nay. Okay. And all those in favor of that, please signify by saying aye. And opposed? No. Okay, that item fails. Not seeing, and please understand, I hope my friends in the health department understand, I love this program. I wish we could have done that through the budget process, but there weren't alternatives. And this is probably one alternative we took a shot at. So we'll continue to have those conversations. But in terms of rollover funds as the source is the intent of my thing. And I just wanted that to be expressed to the commissioner and the committee chair. So not seeing any other items on our agenda, I think we are adjourned. Thank you very much.